Springtime, the best time of the year to plant trees, right? Oh, it's not the best time? The best time is, so when can you plant? You can plant anytime the soil isn't frozen. Well, you could plant from spring to fall. If you're in a place where the soil doesn't even freeze, you can plant in the winter. Well, we get snow, so it's spring to fall here. But let's start with what's the worst time to plant a tree. The worst time is actually full summer. Imagine the leaves are out, everything is in full leaf, and you're trying to plant that tree. That's a lot of stress on the tree. You get water shortage. You could have the trees that are planted, that are well established, can even wilt on a hot, sunny summer day. So what do you think your newly planted tree will go through? It will suffer. So forget about summertime planting, please. Even if you plant a potted plant or a potted tree, it's not ideal. I've always been amazed in the spring how quickly leaves can start popping out. You ever wonder where does the tree or the shrub get the energy to pop all these leaves out? Well, it all comes down to the trees, or in this case, a shrub's ability and currency. It's kind of like money. You say, well, trees and shrubs don't deal with money. Well, they deal the same way we do, in that it's a medium of exchange. So we consider money a medium of exchange. We exchange time for money or money for time. Plants do the same thing. Their currency, though, the money for them is sugar. That's pretty simplistic. Well, but actually it is. It's their currency. What did they use sugar for? Why produce it? Why exchange it? Because they can produce it, because they have these things, leaves, solar collectors. And so they use these solar collectors to collect the sun's energy, to turn it into sugars, which that sugar then is used to trade with the microherd in the soil, bacteria, fungi, and a whole range of other groups, and they have an exchange going on. In fact, let me give you a little gruesome fact. When plants produce sugars, they are doing it like a sneaky predator. They take the sugar and they pump it to the tips of their roots, because the very tip of the root is a very quick and active growth place. And it's also the place where they have the best exchange of sugars. So they put out sugars for all the microherd, and they gather at the tip of the root tip. And then you know what the root actually does? Is it gets these bacteria to go right along their root, because they're looking for a sugar-rich solution. And as the bacteria get close enough, the root actually creates a suction pressure, osmotic pressure, that makes the bacteria stick to the root tip. And then they suck the life out of that bacteria. You think, that's gruesome. Well, that's what they do. You think, no, that can't be. Well, think of it. Have you ever seen a real new little root and how white it is? Have you ever seen hydroponic production? Have you ever seen how nice and white all the roots are? How come they're so white when if you dig a plant in the soil, you go, there's a little bit of white and then there's a whole lot of brown roots? Why would the roots go brown? They go brown because as they're sucking the life, which is protoplasm, out of the bacteria right through their cell wall, they're sucking that out. And then they accumulate one layer of cell walls. And then they pull through that one another. And you get this accumulation of cell walls to the point where now it's got a thick amount of these cell walls and it can't pull protoplasm through it anymore. So that's why the most active place is at the very tip, the white part of the roots. Well, that doesn't make sense. Have you ever wondered why excrement or poop is brown, you think it's just brown. That's just the way it is. Why is it brown? Well, it's brown for the same reason as the browning on the outside of a root. Go deeper on this. A root is the same thing like we have. Our digestive system, you know, there's many, many feet of intestinal tubes. We eat something, it gets partly digested in our stomach, then it goes into our intestines, and then from there we got microbiome. We're learning more and more about microbiome. That microbiome is the same thing that's happening in the soil, except on the outside. So a root is a stem with microbiome surrounding it, while an intestine is the opposite. It's a tube with the microbiome on the inside of it, but both work the exact same way. Nature just figures things out and repeats the pattern because it works. So you say, if we plant in the spring, what's happening? We plant when there isn't any or very little solar collectors out. We're planting, the sun is high, it's the spring, it's getting hotter. And then we're asking for this newly planted tree or shrub to put out leaves, to grow some roots, to get set. We're asking for it an awful lot. So spring is not an ideal time to plant trees and shrubs. You can, especially if it's a potted tree or shrub, it's okay, but it's not the best. The best time to plant a tree or shrub that's deciduous, that loses its leaves, is just when that tree or shrub is ready to grow the most roots. You think of it, in the summer, you've built up all these solar panels, all these leaves. Then, you ever wonder how come a leaf changes color? Why does it change color? What's happening that it changes color? It's the plant is drawing those sugars and those nutrients out of the leaves, and so the leaf basically is left with a lot of carbon, but not much nutrients in the leaf. As it goes from the branch tip or the bud, it transfers those sugars to small stems, gradually to larger stems, and then to the main trunk of the tree or shrub. And is that the end of it? It stays there? No. Plants have seen where this plant can be completely mowed in the winter by a rabbit or voles or deer. If it stored all that sugar in its branches and the main stem, it could lose everything. So plants have been around long enough to know that the safest place to store their sugars for the winter is down in its roots. So if you have all this sugar moving around, going from where the leaves were, gradually going to the stem and the trunk, and getting ready to go into the roots, it's just like your bank account. I said it's a currency, right? Well, all summer long, that plant has been working, putting out panels, getting more and more and more sugar to accumulate. And now it's the time to put that money, that currency, that sugar into its winter reservoir. So it puts it in the roots, but the roots go, there isn't enough room in my bank account. So you gotta make a bigger bank account. You build up. So that's what the plant does. It builds its bank account, it expands, you're depositing, and that's when it grows. To the point where 85% of root growth on a tree or shrub that is deciduous happens after leaf fall. Did you get that? Like, that's incredible. 85%? So think of all the roots that are going to grow in that year. The vast majority, everything except 15% of the massive roots, happens once the leaves fall. So what happens if you plant in the fall? Just as the leaves are falling, you've got a plant that is full of energy, it's just bursting with energy. I say the plant is fat. It's got so much energy stored in its stems and getting ready to put it out in the roots for the winter. So if you plant it in the fall, you'll get immediate growth of roots. What happens in the fall? The sun has gone down, it's lower, the air temperature gets cooler, but the fall is the time where the soil is the absolute warmest, especially when you've deposited a blanket of leaves on it to insulate from the cold. Warm soil, cool air is the best time to grow roots. So putting your plant in the spring is not ideal. To plant it, because people say it's the best time, right? You gotta plant your trees and shrubs in the spring. It's okay at best. The absolute best time to plant a tree or a shrub that is deciduous, that drops its leaves, is right after leaf fall.